Hello everyone. Can't even talk. Welcome to our Tuesday night arts call. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Stephanie Chaikin, the director of the New Jersey City University Center for the Arts. And we have Christine Goodman, the director of the Office of Cultural Affairs for the City of Jersey City, Heather Werfel Sandler, and McAdam Smith, co-chairs of the Jersey City Arts Council. And we'd like to welcome you. Each week we have been tackling some topics. And this week we are very glad to welcome Jamie Rudolph, who is the Director of Grants at Rising Tide Capital. And Jamie oversees all of the proposals and post-award stewardship for Rising Tide Capital. So this evening, he is going to share some tips and inside tools to help us procure some funding. So, Jamie.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you for having me. So I'm going to hop right into, I have what I thought I would do is have about a 20-minute presentation or so through a PowerPoint, and then we'll do a Q&A for specific questions about anything I present, or if you have other questions that you brought into the meeting in terms of a particular grant or just general approach to grant seeking and resiliency and stuff like that. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Although, let's see. Okay. Let's do this in slideshow. All right. Is it coming up okay? Or did it go back to the other screen?
Nope,
it went back to the other screen.
Right, okay. I guess if I do the slideshow, it takes up my whole screen and I had notes to the side. So just give me 1 second. Yeah. I've got double screens here. Sorry for the technical difficulties, just give me 1 moment. All right, now where is this going to be? There we go. Just a moment here. And now it went to the okie dokie. Just one more moment. Gotta love how we start a meeting like this and start with the technical. You know, we did actually prepare for this beforehand and I still wind up screwing it up. So do not blame the Center for the Arts technical people because they were really good. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Okay. All right, so in terms of, oh, it did it to this screen again, whatever, forget the notes. Let's just do it. All right. So, I am, as Stephanie said, the Director of Grants at Rising Tide Capital. This is about me a little bit here. Picture's a little bit old. As you can see, I look a little bit like halfway to Santa Claus now with the beard. Raised a little bit of money. A lot of that's for NJCU, actually. I used to be the Assistant Director of Grants at NJCU at the Office of Sponsored Grants and Sponsor Programs. I was there for about 5 years. I also worked in healthcare for a little bit at Trinitas Regional Medical Center in Elizabeth. Happened to be part of an Aspen Institute Workforce Leadership Academy currently here in Hudson County with a bunch of really good organizations here. I was a Lead New Jersey Fellow back in 2014. I also happened to work on the Healthier Jersey City project. It's out of Health and Human Services. And I actually have a side business myself where I do grant writing and I help other nonprofits and educational organizations go after certain grants and stuff like that. So for this particular meeting, I'm representing, or in this presentation, I'm representing Rising Tide Capital, which is located here in Jersey City, or at least I think most of the people here are from Jersey City. So started here in 2004, mostly focused on micro enterprises, small businesses, sole proprietors, partnerships, LLCs, that sort of thing, but mainly people that make under 5 million, and actually mainly people who make under less than $100,000 a year. These are our programs that we do have. We do a lot of other services in terms of workshops and professional sales training courses that we've done with William Patterson University. And we have a couple different pitch competitions where one is in particular where it's a half-day tutorial and a full-day sort of workshop / pitch competition where you actually get to learn about it. And then you're sort of, you then pitch to a panel and you can win money. Then we have a straight pitch competition as well. The business acceleration services is very much sort of, oh, you're seeing a different thing. Okay. I see things moving here and I don't know, the two screens. So let me just stop. Okay. Are you on the screen with the programs? Yeah, right?
Yes, we have
Okay.
3 programs. Yep.
Gotcha. So just very quick, because I know people want to get to like funding and stuff like that, but I just want to let you know the resources that are available to you through Rising Tide. We have a Community Business Academy, which is a 12-week course. It's basically about basic business management. It's designed for people that didn't have like the full sort of educational experience. I would say it's on the level of a sort of community college sort of thing, but you can actually get 6 credits at St. Peter's if you graduate. After that, we provide business acceleration services, which is basically the umbrella for everything else in a way. It's one-on-one coaching at like little to no cost, like $10 an hour to get a business coach. And all the pitch competitions, the sort of specialized workshops, the sales training, the side of high growth services. And then our third sort of branch out program is Credit to Capital, which used to be part of the BAS, Business Acceleration, but because it's so important nowadays and it's such a big part of startups and entrepreneurship that we've decided to build that up now, especially at this time now with all the money that's coming in through the loan programs and disaster recovery. We felt we had to build capacity in this area because there's a big need in New Jersey for this area. So that's Credit to Capital, and those are services here at Rising Tide. I don't know that seems like I can't control can I go next? Yeah, there we go. So here's our approach, and I don't want to talk about this too much, but this is just sort of, we take a very local living economy approach. We work on a lot of partnerships. We're on partnership coalitions with organizations in New Brunswick and Newark, a couple different ones here in Jersey City. But the idea is like we've really intentionally designed our educational and our business services for mostly low-income, underserved people. We are 80% of our clients are low to moderate income, 90% are minorities, and for the federal government's purposes, they don't consider Asians minorities, even though it's a big population here. So that's mostly just African Americans and Hispanics being counted towards a minority number. And then we're 70% women. Our CEO is an African American woman. We're very intentional about that, about where we set up shop. We essentially set up an office in the distressed areas of urban areas in New Jersey. And we've actually replicated this, and we've replicated our services. And now there's actually organizations in Chicago, Charleston, and what's the other Charlotte, that are replicating our whole sort of our model, our back-end infrastructure, how we do everything, we train and all that stuff. So next slide, I guess. I don't know if I'm doing this or if someone else is. In terms of what's going on now and how we're pivoting, just to give you a sort of understanding of what we're doing. We usually serve about 1,000 people a year. We've had 3,000 graduates come through the CBA. Usually our clients start about 100 businesses a year. They strengthen or expand their business like 500 or so. But because of what was going on when the COVID and the social distancing and the sort of shutdown happened, we obviously shut down with everyone else for a couple of weeks. And then we decided we have to pivot and we have to be there for our entrepreneurs and the clients, 3,000 of them in New Jersey at this point, mostly between Bergen County and New Brunswick. I want to say northern New Jersey, northern to central. We're sort of getting down into those areas now to Trenton and stuff, but a couple of years from now. But because of the loans that were out, the loan packages, the SBA loans, the NJEDA loans that were coming out, there's been a couple rounds each of this. We decided we really needed to focus on this because this is where the businesses were focused on. We actually have a lot of clients because our clients are coming from disadvantaged areas. It may not have, we're not talking tech startups here. We're talking people who maybe had a side hustle that they were doing on the side and want to build that into a business. So we were basically trying to keep, help them survive at this point, with cash flow management, with financial planning, helping them to sort of, with digital strategies, how can they do digital marketing? And we're also doing digital inclusion programs. Like we recognize there was already a digital divide for a lot of people, whether it's education. I mean, a lot of people, are in the arts and engineering, they understand this already, where people don't have they don't have the high-speed bandwidth, they don't have the computers. So we're actually writing grants right now to get our clients, our neediest clients, let's say, access to this, including possibly even getting them money for their sort of internet connections for their businesses and stuff like that. So we've got stuff out to major organizations about this right now. And we're preparing for regular disruptions, as everyone else should be at this point. We were thinking about having hybrid classes in the fall. I think at this point we're talking fully online, which is really difficult for us because we don't, we're very hands-on. We always talk about experiential learning. I mean, arts, I mean, how do you even, I don't even know. Yeah, I mean, you guys are probably dealing with this like to the nth degree, right? Because art is so much about tangibility and the closeness but anyway. So we're trying to figure out a way to do this, and we use adult experiential learning sort of methodology. So we're trying to figure out a way to do this. I would love to have a virtual classroom, like a fully virtual classroom, but I don't think we have the technology quite there for that. And then we're actually partnered on with the Hudson County SBDC at NJCU on a project that we have an SBA proposal that's out there right now waiting. And then we're going to do some sort of joint workshops and stuff with them. But for the most part, it's about keeping people in business, helping them access the financing that they need to just survive these few months until things get a little bit back to normal where they can start bringing in some income again. That's that. So I think next slide, if someone's got this. All right. So this is a very just like it's thrown together here, but and all this other stuff. But in terms of funding sources, if we're talking about straight right now resiliency recovery money that's out there, right? You've got the SBA money that is probably already exhausted, right? There may be another round, there may not be another round. There's a lot of politics involved with this. And I'm going to, just in case anyone's doing notes, I'm going to totally send this whole thing. This has already been sent out in case I think that Stephanie or may be able to just distribute this in case people, so in case we go too fast, not that I'm going too fast here, I don't think, but if people want to write stuff down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the NJEDA had a couple rounds. They had the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund, which I think is like the day before Stephanie and I spoke a few weeks ago. They were going to do the next round the next day. And I was emphasizing you literally have to apply the first hour or within the first 2 hours otherwise, because it's basically based on merit, on need. And it's not so much these government stuff is based on, they're going to ask you questions, which I'll get to in a second. But it's mostly based on how big you were, what were your what was your revenue last year, or how many clients did you serve last year, and what are you doing now? What's the difference between last year and this year? Are you in an industry? The first New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund round was strictly relegated to what they said was at high needs industries, so healthcare related, and I think it was like food service and stuff. The industries that were really immediately hit badly. Then they opened up the second round, and they even made nonprofits eligible for the second round. But very much the government stuff is based on like what's your income? It's just numbers, for the most part. The private corporate foundations, this is a little different here. The weird, I've found, so just in general, when it comes to fundraising in these worlds, it's very much more relationship based. Who do you know at the foundation? How do you get your foot in the door just to start the relationship? Are there connections on your board or people that you work with that work on their board? Or do you know somebody has an account with that? It's literally like, how do you just spark the relationship and keep it going as if you're dating on a regular basis? And you have to keep, and I have stuff about that as well in terms of grantsmanship and a grant cycle and stuff. But what I'm noticing here just is the market realities are hitting these differently. For a weird reason right now, corporate, especially the banks, are giving out their money early. So Rising Tide gets money from 35 different organizations. We have almost a $6 million budget, and we are 90% grant funded. And we've been doing this for years. And it's based on the fact that we have set deliverables and we meet those deliverables, and we have this great relationship sort of management cycle that we do with our funders. But the corporations, the banks reach out to us, and almost, I want to say at least 50% of the banks that we get money from all reach out to submit early. And my feeling is that the corporate foundations, they already have their budget, but they're worried about like the next quarter hitting and the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? But when the balance sheets come in, or when the corporate earnings come in at a quarter, they're going to dip, right? So I think, frankly, I think they're trying to give out the money that was allocated to them before the year started, knowing that it may not be there later in the year. So the banks are giving out their money. The private foundations have completely done the opposite with a couple big, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a writer, I should know what this, but a few big exceptions. So the private foundations generally invest their money all year. And then they give out their money for the most part at the end of the year, because then it just works out for them tax wise. They can invest their money all year, they make all the money and the interest off it, then they give out the money at the very end, then they can put on their taxes that they gave out all that money last year, but they give it out in December, which kind of, it makes it difficult for nonprofits and community orgs, but that's how, excuse me, that's how they like to do it. They've pulled back. A lot of them are worried because of the market. Their investment portfolios went down, so their giving's going down. We had Rising Tide had 2 of our 3 biggest funders reduce our funding by about 25 to 33%. And that was about $500,000 between those 2. So we had to make it up in other ways, but it's just a little bit different. These are different realities in terms of who you're going after. Individuals, I don't have much experience in that. It's been something I've never really done, but in terms of digital fundraising and appeals, there's annual appeals, there's letters you can send out. There's crowdsourcing, which is not the worst idea nowadays in terms of Kiva, I like a lot. We've had some partnerships with them. I have an account with Kiva where I have like a couple $100 that I sort of give out, and then people give me the money back, and then I just keep giving out the money and stuff like that. But if you have people that who you might be willing to sort of give, $100 here or $50 here, almost like you're raising money for you're running a marathon or something, and you want people. You can do that for crowdsourcing and get $10,000. And if you do it with Kiva, Kiva will match some of that money as well. Grameen will do it. I Fund Women, similar. There's also some no interest loans out there. The Ford Foundation, the Nonprofit Finance Fund. There actually are no interest loans out there right now from major organizations. I'm not too familiar with it because I'm a grants person, and we have somebody else at Rising Tide who does that particular thing, the loans, the finance people. But and then there's direct cash release. There's United for Alice. FII, I had the abbreviation for it, but I cannot remember what it was. But you can look it up and look at direct cash relief and FII, and it'll come up in terms of what's out there. There are, and I said, in terms of the private foundations, actually, let's go to the next slide. I think I mentioned it later. All right. So in terms of, there are tons of resources out there. And this is the main thing. It's like, okay, where do I find it? And then the second thing is, does it apply to me, right? Is it even worth me going after it? Am I trying to fit a round peg into a square hole type of thing? But for the most part, I think where people should look is that first one. The New York Federal Reserve, if you click on that, or if you just go look up New York Federal Reserve, disaster relief or COVID resources and stuff, that, and let's hit the next page. Go to the next slide. I don't know. There's NJDA and all this stuff, but let's hit the next slide. Okay, there we go. And this is just a small snapshot of what the Fed has. And you can see on the left-hand side, they've got, what I really like is they've got, not only just, okay, where's the money, but also resources for nonprofits. So I really like the Duke University. They've got a database for global, national, and regional capital sources, whether you're a nonprofit or a profit. But then you've got stuff like the freelance artists down there, COVID-19, like click on that, and there's resources there. Grant makers in the arts, you can click on down there, and that is a whole nother set of resources. So rather than go through all of that right now, which can get like repetitive and stuff like that, it's just, I want to sort of connect you to what I think is the best sort of list. The New York Fed has been really active in terms of keeping this list. curated. There aren't any broken links that I've found. There's stuff for small business on the left that explains the Paycheck Protection Program and the CARES Act. There's a whole other section for housing. There's another section for if you're an employee and you need, you're not sure what your rights are and stuff like that, or what unemployment stuff. The New York Fed is really just comprehensive in this regard. So that is the #1 place I would look for COVID-related and disaster recovery resources. I could hit the next one. All right, so in terms of the disaster recovery money that's out there, whether you're a business or a nonprofit, it's important to have this stuff going on and have it ready. And the reason for this is that I wasn't even prepared for the last New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund round, right? So we did, Rising Tide applied for it. You could apply for $10,000. I think we applied for something crazy like $500,000. It was just like obscene or something. I don't remember what it was, but we're like, well, let's go for broke and see what we can, like we did lose that amount of money. But the first round of the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund, #1, it was a very difficult process to find, okay, where's the application last time? Because that's the first thing I'm going to look for. What are the questions they're going to ask? Is this even worth it for me? Is it like too much? Is it too crazy? Are we eligible? That kind of thing. They did have it, right? They had it there and you could see it, but then the second round, it was wholly different questions. So I had most of this stuff ready. I had all this stuff ready. The 501c3 letter that I'm a nonprofit, the articles of incorporation, your industry code, which by itself could take you an hour and a half to find out what your industry code is. So you probably should just figure out what that is first. And the reason why I say all this stuff is because you kind of need to have this stuff ready. And those SBA grants, if another round comes out, if the NJEDA comes out with another round, those you have to apply within like the first few hours because they have so many people applying that literally there's 10 to 20,000 people applying after the first couple hours, and they only look at who's eligible and who's worthy in order of as they come in, right? So, because there's no other way for them. I mean, they could throw it into a hat, I guess. I don't know. But like they come up with a rubric first, and the rubric was, we're going to give out the money to the best organizations as they come in. So if all the money was exhausted because all the worthy organizations were there in the first day, well, then all that money was gone in the first day and you had to apply. And if you applied the next day, like you didn't even have a shot. It might be that they're going to do a fund down. And you'll get this from certain organizations. The U.S. Department of Education will do this in certain grant competitions. Instead of having a whole other competition, having people apply again and all the money and the time that goes into that, they got more money, we're going to fund the next set down, or the next 10 million down, sort of thing. So hopefully that'll happen again. But it's important if you're a nonprofit, especially to have this kind of stuff going on, because this is the stuff they're going to look at when they're going to ask. What's your sustainability plan? Nobody likes to fund a sinking ship. So if it's just a matter of like, well, I just need to get through this and I'm probably going to close my business, they don't want to hear that, right? Or if you're just looking to, well, I just need to get, if you don't have a clear understanding and you can't articulate what you're going to use the money for and how you're going to pivot and still survive even when this money is exhausted, they're probably not going to fund you. So you should have at least a 6-month plan to get through the year. In terms of budget, that's what Rising Tide did. We knew we had budget cuts coming in. Rising Tide decided, and this is, I don't know how confidential this is, but we just decided, like, instead of worrying all of our employees for the rest of the year about when's the next shoe going to drop, we decided they put together a budget that would last us for the rest of the year, that there wouldn't have to be cuts. And we made a round of cuts. And I think we let go of 6 people out of 28 at our organization. Some pretty important people that were pretty great, actually, that have been with us for 10 years. Part of the Arts Council here too, I think too. I mean, they were awesome. But they made a decision in order to, and that could help you with your employees a little bit too, or if you've got a business like that, an organization, is to sort of plan out for the rest of the year so that your employees aren't looking, not that they can really look for jobs elsewhere because the market's kind of tough, but you don't want the worry on your employees. So Rising Tide decided, okay, this is what we need. This is what our budget's going to look like for the rest of the year. If all things are fine, even if we lose a little money, we still be able to survive and we won't have to let anyone else go. And that's what we decided to do. And this is how we're sort of articulating it better, like in our proposals and stuff. But having a website, if is important, having it updated. What do you know, if you're doing anything during COVID, if you've pivoted and you're doing virtual stuff, if, you know, like you probably should have that up there. Social media, it's just anybody that's going to look for you, the first thing they do is just look up your website, or they Google you to see like, it's almost like a legitimacy thing, right? You almost kind of need to have a website. I mean, you don't, but the other thing I would say is, and you can see the language, the word limits, you know, you probably should have a 250 page, you know, explain your whole organization, your mission, your history, and what you do, and everything in 50 words, I should say, one page. And sometimes you have to do that. And it's insanity. The fact that tens of thousands of dollars can be tied to the 250 words. And if it's compelling, it's compelling though. If you catch people, if you're a writer, you know, I mean, like you don't send out a short story unless that first paragraph catches you, right? Because no editor is reading past that first page if it's boring, right? So practice your 30-second pitch, because you probably won't, like, in-person interactions are going to be even less frequent now. So if and when you do get an opportunity to get in front of somebody, have your pitch ready about what you do, who you serve, what's your history, you know, do you have some measure, how do you measure success, you know, where you're going, you know, this is how we're pivoting in the post-COVID recovery world sort of stuff. And maybe have something ready, like a follow-up. And when I say follow-up readiness, is like you might actually meet somebody, but no one's going to take your business card anymore. You can't even handshake or something. So how do you then, you know, is there something you can immediately send them once you get their email? Like figure out a way to sort of touch base real quick virtually after meeting. And you may need, we're actually getting into this at Rising Tide, where virtual pitching in terms of just videos, which pitch competitions have been out there for a long time in terms of doing videos. So this is something that's been out there a while, but you, in terms of pitching what you're about and what you could do and who you can serve and how great you are, you may need to do that all digitally now too. So probably be ready with that. All right, next slide. And this is more general for nonprofits, I want to say, and this is just general sustainability for grant seeking. Is just, you know, develop some fund searching skills. There are search engines out there where all you have to do is go there, you put in an address, and maybe just create a fake one on Google or something, so you don't, you know what I mean? They don't clog up your personal email and stuff. But Rising Tide, we have a grants at Rising Tide, capital, whatever, so it doesn't clog up my personal, but I can do all my portal, you know, submissions, everything goes into that one. Grants.gov for the government stuff. AACU, if you work at a college, your college has that, and they have their own grant search. It's pretty well, like it's like weekly alerts with curated by arts and, you know, in different subject matter. Google Alert I use all the time. I highly recommend Google Alert for the stuff that's out there that you may not find. So you can set up a Google Alert for arts funding. You could set up arts in New Jersey. You could set up, all you have to do is figure out the keywords that you want to find out, that you want articles about, and Google will put it in your inbox in the morning every time something comes up, so that you don't have to search the web for every random article that comes up. The rest of the stuff is really just about regular sort of grant seeking, and in terms of like trying to make sure that it's a good match. You know, go through their 990s. Actually, a lot of if you're a foundation, I think corporate foundations have to do it as well, but private and corporate foundations, they all have their 990s out there that you can look at from usually a couple of years ago. You can see who they're giving money to. Are they giving money to your type of organization? Are they giving money in your area is also probably the other key thing. Is, you know, is it your subject area, and is it in the geographical area? Cultivating connections, and as I was saying before, relationship manager is really important when it comes to private and corporate foundations. It's even a little important in government stuff too. Government agencies actually have discretionary funding that they almost never tell you about. Unfortunately, a lot of that is in STEM and in healthcare and, you know, health research and stuff, which is where a lot of the federal money goes. But there's a lot of discretionary sort of money that's out there that program officers get for their pet projects, like innovation projects and stuff. So it doesn't hurt to ask, is to call the person up, and once you strike up a relationship with somebody, they're expecting it. So that when the proposal comes in, they've been prepped for it a little bit. It doesn't hurt. You may get people who don't want that. They don't want people calling them, and you just got to leave them alone. And what are you going to do? But and then the last thing is like, how extensive is the reporting? Do you really want to get into this is the thing. Like, is the other reporting requirements so extensive that it may not be worth the money for you to go after this? And I'm thinking certain healthcare, health and human services stuff tends to be like this. County related grants could get like this, where you've got to report on stuff monthly according to their stuff, not in your own Excels, like that kind of stuff. But okay, doke. Next one. All right. And so in terms of marketing yourself, and in terms of, I don't know, I always like when you're going after funding, think about the other person, the person on the other side who's giving out the money. And I hate to be transactional like this, but it's just how things are. You do have very mission-oriented people who work at corporate foundations, who work at private foundations, who it's really about the work, about the people being served, about, you know, it's about making an impact, right? And moving the needle in certain stuff, or it's about, you know, providing, you know, anyway. But a lot of times, you know, these are people who have jobs still, right? So when you propose something to somebody like a program officer at a corporation or a private bank and stuff, I'm sorry, a private foundation, they still need to sell that. They need to pitch that to their boss, right? So you've got to basically make yourself or your organization so attractive to them that it's compelling, that they want to be a partner with you. They want to be known as somebody that funds you. And there's certain ways you can do this. Publicity is the biggest one. I mean, it's just sort of, a lot of these corporations and banks will actually ask you, what publicity are you going to provide once this comes out? You know, what does this look like? Does it look like a press release? Are we going to be on your website? Do you have materials that will be on the back of it? Think about this stuff, because in terms of like doing the proposals, they'll ask this stuff. And if you have very little of that, if it seems like you're providing them with very little in terms of added value, they may look elsewhere. It's just sort of, they want the rock stars a lot of times, unfortunately. But so there's publicity, there's connections, and that's a little bit of a lesser one. It's sort of like who's on your board maybe that they might want to like talk to, or, you know, or be connected with for some reason. A lot of times the connection stuff is personal. It might be that like you're an artist, or you just, and like there's somebody there who's really into your type of art, and they want to like, they kind of just want to hang out and talk about it, right? And it's sort of, and it gets to be this sort of weird, difficult thing where like, I don't get into this world because it's very much, it becomes part of your life almost, where your fundraising and your personal life become intertwined. And I'm a grants person, so I don't do too much of that. But a lot of foundations in terms of, a lot of people who do individual donors and get a lot of money from individuals, that's what that life is like. And volunteer opportunities, banks, and as you can see the CRA requirements serving disadvantaged communities, banks especially, financial institutions who generally have the most money besides the 5 or 6 big like foundations. In our area, there are at least 15 to 20 banks giving out money in Jersey City. M&T, PNC, Provident, JP Morgan, Goldman. There's certain ones that are downtown that have headquarters that don't really, like Deutsche Bank really doesn't do too much here, maybe a little bit, but they don't have formal grant applications. But if you serve disadvantaged communities, you're checking off a box for these banks and major corporations. So again, you're fitting into, you're providing them with added value. And then also think about like just timeliness, be compelling, relevant, timely. Like, do you serve a lot of African Americans? I mean, I hate to be like this, but like, are you providing virtual art therapy in some way, or art therapy for people that are stressed because of COVID? You know, what is the angle that you can sort of, in the new economy, when you're looking forward, and what can you provide? Who are you serving that you're not really thinking about? But there are buckets and there are funder focus areas, which is a further slide. And if you can be in more than one of those, then you're helping them out, because there's funding. A lot of corporations and banks have certain focus area, and they say, oh, we're only giving 10 million out here. We're giving 5 million here. We've got 3 million for this. And if you can hit more than one, you have a much better chance. You've got double the chance, essentially, of getting that money. So next slide. At the same time, as you're thinking about being creative and stuff, which I think is the next one, but you still want to stay true to your mission, right? And avoid, and if, for the most part, chasing money, which is this sort of thing where you're not running a program. It's not something you do, but you see money out there. And you think, hey, I can put this together and we can do this program and we'll start it up and I'll go after this money. But what winds up happening with that is that you wind up moving away from what you really want to do. And you know, if you're doing something that is not part in your wheelhouse, you don't do it with as much passion. You know, it winds up being sort of ad hoc. And but anyway, I would just, for the most part, try to, you know, stay in your lane for the most part while thinking about how you can, thinking about what you can do, I should say, fits in other buckets or serves other people, but I'll get to that in one second. But know when to get it from the table. Some funders are just gonna require and ask too much of you. They may ask stuff about your clients, the people you're serving that like makes you uncomfortable, that you're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And I would just say, try to keep your promises, promise less than, you know, if there's a certain you know, if you talk about we're gonna serve 50 clients in a year, make sure you normally serve 60. So it always looks like you're sort of, you know, exceeding your goals type of stuff. And for the most part, a lot of the people reading the reports don't pay attention to the proposals later. So even though you may have served 70, you're now proposing 50. And then when you hit 60, you still exceed your goals, even though you actually served 10 less than you did the previous year, but they don't know that because they're not paying attention. Okay, next slide. I kind of screwed up the visual here. It's the same thing, but like that was supposed to be, don't try to get your square peg into the round hole sort of thing, right? But, which is a complete oxymoron here, because what I'm telling you is to be creative, especially with partnerships. Unfortunately, you know, not unfortunately, but art is essential, as you see down there. It is, you know, it is absolutely essential to life. It is part of everything. I think most industries and even if it's tech, it's science and stuff like that. There's a lot of art that goes in that. I mean, the whole life should be a sort of art project for us all, correct? And, you know, it basically, I would probably die without art, without music, without writing, with, you know, like it just all that. But unfortunately, in times of economic distress, money for art is usually the first thing to go. Because they almost feel like it's superfluous. It's not essential, right? So what I would say is try to show how art is essential. How it enriches other fields, that kind of thing. And think creatively in terms of partnerships. So you may see a funding opportunity that's not eligible for you. Say you're a for-profit individual artist, a sole proprietor, or you have an LLC, or you may not be able to apply for something, but a nonprofit might. But so if you know somebody in the nonprofit world who can apply for this, you could then approach them and say, hey, I've got this program. It fits this perfectly. I can't apply for it, but if you guys apply for it, I'll do this for you. And then you guys take some money off the top for your overhead and for the space maybe, or whatever it is. And then you can pay that person individual as a consultant. And that's perfectly fine. A lot of times they'll ask for your budget beforehand, and you have contractors, consultants, that kind of thing. Rising Tide ourselves, we have 22 employees. We have about 50 to 60 consultants, business consultants, who are the coaches for us. They're the instructors in our classes. And we have them because they've started small businesses. They know what it takes. They've proven they can do it. We want those people to be the people who coach our clients, right? So anyway, let me get past that. But you can hurdle eligibility rules. You could essentially say, okay, a lot, and especially the colleges, NJCU and Hudson County Community and St. Peter's are eligible, because they are institutions of higher ed, are eligible for tons and tons of money, right? It may not necessarily be in the arts. National Endowment for the Arts doesn't have a ton of money in compared to, say, the National Science Foundation or the National Institute of Health. But there are a lot of capacity building grants like Title V, Title III. These are U.S. Department of Education grants that are usually 5 years long. They're anywhere from $3 million to $5 million. I've written a bunch of these. At one point at NJCU, we had 5 or 6 of these at one time, to the point where they had to make a rule we couldn't get any more. They're usually based on building, the Title III and Title V are specifically about bringing up Hispanic students, right? But you can't just focus on Hispanic students. You can't just throw money at one particular race or ethnic group, right? So it's about the fact that all 3 institutions here in Jersey City have a certain percentage of their student population that are Hispanic, over 25%. That makes them eligible for all this Title V money. And there's another competition happening this January and February. So I think that one is going to be STEM-based, unfortunately, but these competitions, while they wind up being sort of focused in a couple different areas, in STEM mostly, because it's easy to get the STEM money, right? But you can still get on these grants. You just got to talk to the people, to the dean, to the people who are sort of overseeing this stuff, and find out. And there are certain people, like I mean, I know the people on NJCU's campus who've written all these things. It's John Grew and Bimnet Tigleski in math, and Steve Haber has written them, and Muriel Rand. Those are your 4 big grant writers who have all written successful Title V and Title IIIs. If you've got a project and you look at that and it may not exactly fit you, but you can hop on there with them, because there might be arts related stuff that still sort of informs or helps the project in some way. But again, you got to be creative about how this is. You know, there's stuff about, I know there used to be stuff about mathematics and poetry, right? I think Karen Morgan or something used to do stuff about that, and they got grants about that. Anyway, so that's internal in terms of if you're at the university. Aim for the anchor institutions. The people who have money in the economic downturns like this are generally the big corporations and the government agencies. And they're the ones who are going to be giving out money. So anchor institutions are the colleges, they're the hospitals, the major industry cluster areas. So for us up in Jersey City, it's finances. If you go down a little bit, you know, to Princeton, New Brunswick, it's like pharmaceuticals and healthcare. And there's a little healthcare here too as well. But they have money, and they need to support their local nonprofits. So I would find a way just to sort of look at like what CarePoint, look at what Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas, who have their own giant foundation, More Money Than God, down in Princeton down there. There's a lot of money that's going to be coming out through these, but you just got to get your Google alerts out there, stay, you know, ear to the ground sort of thing. The government agencies, the Fed, the state, the county, the city especially has been very active in trying to help out. They have the JCEDC, and there's a couple other things going on. And there's money, I think you guys were even talking about possibly after this, what money's out there. And again, pivoting, you know, what service can you provide in the new economy? And I hate to read the PowerPoint, but people are going to want to know, like, how are you pivoting? How are you going to survive? Like, what happens if people are not going back to work? A lot of corporations, I can tell you this right now, like, so Rising Tide has told us we don't have to be back in the office until September because we have kids and they can't go to camp, right? A lot of corporations are telling people they don't have to go back to work till January. So if you think about what that's going to mean for all sorts of businesses that rely around the businesses or got money from these businesses, and whether it's restaurants or service workers and stuff, you got to start planning for this to the point where, like, we could be going through this almost on a cyclical basis. These disruptions. Can you do curbside stuff? Can you do virtual stuff? And as I said, art is essential. So try to show it. Next one. And this is sort of what I was saying before, right? So almost every single foundation, corporation, or anybody you approach for money, they have specific focus areas, priorities. You've got to fit into there, or else don't waste your time, because they literally, again, square peg round hole. Everybody I've talked to on the other side who gives out the money, and hopefully I'll be there someday, so I don't have to worry about deadlines for the rest of my life. But it says, don't try to fit the square peg into the round hole. It's the one thing, because you're just wasting people's time, and you wasted mostly your own time putting together something that they're going to look and they say, you're not in our focus area. Why would we do this? But you all are in the arts, right? The arts, are you serving children? That's a whole nother bucket, right? Are you doing aftercare? Are you able to provide, so I know all sorts of charter schools here that have all sorts of aftercare programs that are artist related, performance art, I mean, even some of our entrepreneurs like UTAP, they do sort of speech and acting lessons and stuff. There's a lot of art-based stuff that happens in the schools, the charters. They, especially the charter schools, I should say, really need to attract and keep the kids there for aftercare. And because I was a parent of a kid in a charter school, if they don't see good programs for aftercare, they'll send their kid elsewhere. So like there is a need for artist related stuff. Healthcare, art therapy was something that we used to write grants about when I was at Trinitas because they had a big behavioral health. So there were certain types of kids that I know it was autistic and stuff like that, but they would use that, whatever, like, is there a way for you to angle into that, right? Healthcare and health and human services, I want to say, and Jersey City is very good about. There's a lot of money that comes through for caring for youth, for seniors, nursing home type stuff. There are programs where, as an artist, you can basically get paid for going into nursing homes and doing 1 hour, 2 hour sessions with them, and then on a regular basis or on a non-regular basis, that kind of thing. Do you serve veterans? Federal money is like crazy for veterans. And obviously education and training is a pretty, not easy one, but it makes total sense in terms of if you're doing education, there's money there. And if you can figure out some sort of angle into the science tech stuff, are you doing digital art? Are you able to, is it graphic design? I don't know if they consider that art or not, I don't know, but try to find a way to fit into the other buckets. It's not just about the arts, it's about healthcare too. It's about serving seniors. It's about, in this way, you're not relegated to your one lane. Now, all of a sudden, you can start branching into other lanes. The other thing I would say is there are all these projects, that coalition-related projects. So there's a neighborhood revitalization tax credit program that comes out. Essentially what it is that an organization, a community development organization gets coalition of nonprofits and for-profits or whatever it is, service-related or arts-related, gets together, puts together a comprehensive development project to revitalize a neighborhood, right? So right now, Garden State Episcopal Development Corporation, which is in our neighborhood in Jersey City, they have the NRTC, and it's called I Love Greenville. So if you're at NJCU, you're actually in Greenville. So you actually apply for this. But they wind up, in a way, what you wind up doing is applying to the coalition to be part of it. And then the coalition puts together this big comprehensive plan that has to do with neighborhood revitalization and small businesses and arts and education and youth services, whatever. It hits all the stuff. They are going to be putting together another proposal in the coming year because they're about to get renewed. It's that time now. So the NRTC project is up there again. It's out there again. So sometime in the next 6 months, maybe reach out to them, be like, we're running this program, that kind of thing, but you have to be running a program. And that's the one thing that's sort of important for for almost all this stuff. It's one thing to serve clients or whatever, but you need to describe it in a way that's a program with outputs, with success measures in some way. A lot of times, unfortunately, when you're getting corporate money and foundational money, they want that. And even the government money wants that too. But like I said, so there's there's opportunity zone money, which is a little different. So the opportunity zone money, that is also out there and actually should be pretty attractive to corporations right now. So in return for corporations getting a very small but guaranteed sort of interest rate over 10 years, like 2% or something like that, corporations put money into a fund to revitalize for usually projects, building projects, resource-related capacity building projects in distressed neighborhoods. That's all over Jersey City. That's green, so MLK area by the light rail over there where Rising Tide is. NJCU has areas like that. There's even areas slightly in the Heights and stuff like that, and in General Square. There are all these opportunity zones. So if you're serving people in those opportunity zones and you have a project that you want to fund in terms of like a building, we want to buy a building and stuff like that. What you do really then is you reach out to like PSE&G or JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs and stuff like that. and they'll fund your project, and they'll get a tax credit from it. They get a guaranteed sort of rate, and it works out for everybody. And it's basically like free money. I don't want to say free money coming in, but you get your money to fund your project. The big look to see what's out there. Every time there's a coalition or a project or whatever, who are the rock stars, you know, of the nonprofits? I like to think Rising Tide is in Jersey City. We started here 15 years ago, or, you know, like we've got a national name now. But in terms of, you know, who do you want to be known for being on the team with, kind of thing, and doing that, even if you're just, it's a small thing, even if you're just getting $15,000 out of a $500,000 grant, the fact that you're on the same name, you know, you're being mentioned amongst these other people will help. And I really do feel like if you cannot find the money directly for yourself, for your organization, the way to go around it is to get it through someone else. It's just to go around the barriers, go over the hurdles and around them in order to get there. Yeah. So next slide. Okay.
So can I interrupt you for a minute, Jamie?
Sure.
We have a question. Do you have a resource, or do you know a resource list or a database that has collated grants and funding opportunities for the independent or for-profit arts organizations?
So grants, so the interesting thing is, well, not interesting so much, but it's changed now. It's a little bit like the Wild West right now, where all of a sudden for-profits can get money, right, through these programs. So that Ford Foundation, so there's 5 major nonprofits who decided, Ford Foundation, W.K. Kellogg, this was big news last week, right? So even though they know their investments have gone down, and normally they would say, okay, we're not going to fund as much, whatever. They decided, you know what, we're going to put up social bonds out. We're going to raise money through bonds. We're going to raise $1.7 billion so we can just give out more money to people. So there's that. I would say go back to, if you're talking about individuals, look for small business. I mean, that's the thing. Even though you're considering yourself an individual, if you're an artist, you're still an individual artist, you're still sort of a small business. And if you haven't already sort of made yourself into a business, I highly recommend it, because unfortunately this whole society is based, the tax rules and are just geared towards small businesses and investors. If you're a worker working for someone else, you're at a severe disadvantage in the United States, unfortunately. I started my own LLC or sole proprietorship, and I can now go here and do whatever, as long as it's work related. I like this expenses, and it's very clear. It's much easier to sort of do your expenses, and you can actually get money out from your workspace. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know this already, but highly recommend making yourself into a business. And then you start looking for this stuff for small businesses. And that's the bucket. Go to New York Fed and look into all the small business stuff. I highly recommend that. There were a couple on the list there. Go to the New York Fed list, and then they had stuff for nonprofits. If you want to look for the art, there were actually ones for grant makers for the arts that were there. There were ones for individuals. I believe it was there too. But don't just look for the nonprofit stuff and the community orgs. Look in the small business, because really you are, in a way, a small business.
That's awesome.
There were a few more slides, but they were kind of, yeah. So here, this is just sort of in terms of if you're thinking of long-term sustainability for yourself as an organization. Come up with a grant cycle. This is something that I didn't have for myself, but Rising Tide had before. In terms of checkpoints, okay, so the grant is submitted, the grant's due here, which means 4 months beforehand, we're reaching out to the program officer to find out how much we can ask for and what do they think they'll fund. You know, then we'll come up with like a concept paper or something like a 2-pager, like this is what we're working on. What do you think fits into your bucket, kind of stuff, right? Then, you know, we submit the grant. Then we send them an FYI email. Oh, I just want to thanks you so much. Just keep an eye out for the grant proposal. Then when we get the grant when the grant does come in, if we get an award, we send them an immediately Wahoo email. Oh, you know, informal. Thank you so much. Just want to like same day let you know we're hitting the ground running and we're just so happy about this. Then the formal acknowledgement letter goes out 2 weeks later. Then 4 weeks after that, we get off to the races, what we call an email. It's just sort of keeping them in the loop to feel like they're part of what you're doing. Sending them faces, the pictures of the people you're affecting, the narrative stories, the sort of testimonials. And then donor relations is just sort of it's so important when it comes to corporate, if you're going out there for corporate and private money, just to sort of build those relationships through a sort of cyclical process. And then evaluation, and this is tough. I don't know how it's done as much in the arts, but there's a difference between outputs, how many people you're serving, and what are the outcomes. So for Rising Tide, it's like we have 1,000 clients a year, but those clients started 100 businesses, and they expanded their businesses and their income. For Rising Tide, after 2 years, after graduating the Community Business Academy, our average entrepreneur experience is like a 95% increase in business revenue and a 63% increase in household revenue, because it's long-term what we do, right? So we are very much, this is how we've been able to sustain our organization, where we're raising $5 million in grants every year. And it's because of the evaluation more than anything else, because we can prove that what we're doing works, even though we haven't done a randomized control trial, and I don't want to get into that. But so next slide. I know we're going long here. I'm so sorry. I talk too much. Maintain, we can go real quick through this. Face-to-face is best. Well, it used to be best. But again, be honest about it. This is this whole Dale Carnegie thing where like there's certain, I don't know if everyone's read like How to Win Friends and Influence People, but the thing that the most beautiful word in most people's minds is their own name. So make sure you say their name, you remember their name, you spell it right. But also, express honest, genuine appreciation, or be honest about it. If you're, if you're not a relationship person, have someone else do it. It's the best thing, I don't like doing the individual donor stuff. I don't like the schmoozing. I like the merit-based stuff. I like the government-related stuff or whatever. I don't do too much relationship management. I do a little bit, but and then just regular touch points. If the only time you're reaching out to somebody is when you need money next, you're probably not getting it, because they feel like they haven't been part of what you're doing. You got to bring them along and tell the narrative tale of what you're doing, what you did before, where you're going next, what their money meant impact-wise for people, the human impact. And then I think this is the last one, maybe the questions or something. Yeah, we can just go past this. So again, develop relationships, that kind of stuff. And yeah, and communications, if you don't already, so communications department, marketing is the second side to fundraising. I always bring this thing up about BP, right? So BP was that oil company that had a giant oil spill in the Gulf, right? They spent $500 million cleaning it up, and then they spent $400 million telling everybody how great they were to clean it up, right? So you could, that's a bad example, I suppose, but it's the example of how corporations think. But nonprofits should think the same. You could be doing the greatest work in the world. You could be the most amazing artist, but if nobody knows about it, nobody knows about it. And it's probably, you're not gonna, you won't sustain yourself. You won't scale up, you won't grow. And the way to grow and to replicate and to keep going and to have sustainable stuff is to have a constant sort of media presence now, unfortunately. And then you can see here, this is pretty much what it is. I guess the next slide should be, yay! I am so sorry, I went like crazy and you guys had other stuff to talk about.
It's awesome. One thing, Jamie, that I'm thinking as you're
look at Summer Dawn right there. Hi, Summer. Sorry.
One thing that, as you brought up about partnerships and evaluations, so I'm thinking that maybe that's an advantage to partnerships too in your evaluations, because in your evaluations you can be using your partner's successes in talking about yourself too, in something that you did together. So
absolutely, I'll give you a very quick example. So we're on a project called Families for Literacy with St. Peter's University, doing ESL work with Women Rising, doing sort of employment related stuff, and New City Kids, who are so it's kind of wraparound services, right? So we're handling both the children and the parents. All the work, 90% of the work is done by New City Kids. And because of that, they get most of the funding, I should hope, because it's going to the kids and stuff. And we're doing what we do best. We're doing a class for them. And that's what we're doing. We're in our lane. And we actually went out of our lane because it turned out that most of the participants were Egyptian. Coptic Christians who knew Arabic as a first language. So we actually had to hire a coach who, at least we don't have the full curriculum in Arabic, but we taught it. We had somebody who could field questions in Arabic for the clients and the people, the students in the classes. But that's the other thing, right? You don't necessarily have to have all the documents. You may not have to have all the audited financials, all that stuff. Let the lead partner deal with all that stuff. You may need, depending on the grant, you may need to provide that to them. For an NRTC project, for government-related money, they're going to want that stuff, unfortunately. But for a corporate or private foundation grant and stuff, a coalition grant, they're not. It's just going to be the main person, the main organization, I should say.
That's awesome. All right, we have some more questions here. Questions about the slideshow. Yes, the slideshow will be, you can reach out to Heather at the Arts Council and get a copy of this slideshow and the video, the audio. And we had a question about a not-for-profit cemetery, which is a 501c13. That's something that,
in terms of funding, it's interesting. Is this the cemetery that's down by on the hill on Newark Avenue? I know they used to do this thing with the goat or something. They had like a ceremony there, or I don't know. That sounded really odd now that I just said that, a ceremony with a goat. But
Wayne, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
I will be honest, I'm not sure about the other 501. You just got to look at the eligibility requirements. A lot of times they're going to tell you, are you a 501c3, or you're a 501, and there's a few others there, or you're a 501c3A, a B, a C, that sort of thing. When in doubt, go for it and get that money. If it's not clear, and again, if it's a lot of work, I would ask somebody first, because you don't want to go through a whole bunch of like putting together a full proposal and stuff like that for nothing. And but if it's unclear, call them up. There's certain, so the NJEDA was really good. I want to say they had a question for me. I called them back, all this other stuff. And I had a question for them that I think I just went online and somebody called me afterwards. They had somebody, one of those chat things, those little text chats on the side. So the NJEDA has been really, really good. Business hours still, but I think you can call them and ask them a lot of questions like that, like would we be eligible? And sometimes, unfortunately, they don't even know. Not the NJDA, but the people who are running the programs. In particular, that last New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund money that came out, they weren't even sure at the time that you applied whether or not they were going to let nonprofits get the money. It still had to be approved by their board or the people that were overseeing their board, but they had anticipated it was going to happen. So I don't know of any direct money for that, but like it's when in doubt.
So you just take the gamble and apply, knowing that you have to be first come, first serve anyways, and just get it in. And then
I got to be honest. So what I did, I had questions I wasn't sure about, and I just applied anyway. I called one person. My finance guy is a late night guy. So I know that I couldn't call him at 9 a.m. when it opened up. He just wasn't going to be there. So I called our co-founder. I said, okay, did we get the paycheck protection money? He said, yeah, it's a loan officially is what that is until it's, forgiven or whatever. He told me how much it was, but it was slightly off by like $3,000. We apparently had gotten another EIDL, which is emergency, some sort of assistance for $10,000 that I wasn't even aware of at the time. So when it comes down to it, what's going to happen is that pandemic relief fund, if we do get the money, they're going to come back to us and they're going to say, do you attest to all this stuff? You can then say, oh, we have some new information, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. When in doubt, if it's easy, go for it.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so very much. It's amazing information.
Yeah, I mean, it'll so the PowerPoint will go out. If you guys have any questions, and like if when it comes to Rising Tide, if you got specific, definitely reach out to them. I do have my sort of side business there, and if anyone has just a question, I'm not gonna charge it for questions. So like if you have a question, just go ahead and ask me, and you can email me there and stuff about specific stuff. And then if you are a business or an individual who is an artist and you were interested in getting support, you can just go to info@Rising Tide. If you're a nonprofit and you want to go after that money, you can still go to Not Rising Tide, and we will help you through that loan application process. We will sit down, well, virtually on the phone with you and walk you through the whole thing. And that's, even though we normally do small businesses only, that NJEDA money, we got a contract for about $37,000. African American Chamber of Commerce got a Hispanic Chamber and one other to help mostly low income. But it's not just for low income, it's for anybody. So anybody can call us and say, hey, I want to go after the SBA loan. I need to go after disaster relief. As long as you're some sort of nonprofit or an organization, individuals, I don't know if you're a sole proprietor, yes, but.
Or people can try it anyways and see if they.
Yeah, exactly. Because how do you know? How do you know until you try? You know, is the kind of thing. Right?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jean.
Listen, thank you. Listen, go for it, and like, don't be discouraged. The money's out there. Just gotta, you gotta be creative about going after it. There's that whole Michael Scott with Wayne Gretzky thing, right? Like, you only, what is it? You only miss the shots you don't take, or something like. Oh, you miss 100% shots. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So.
That's awesome. All right, Christine, do you have any announcements?
Stephanie, I'm going to bow out. Good luck, artists. We love you. Keep writing, keep performing, keep doing all that stuff. Please, you make my life a lot better. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Jamie.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jamie. That was phenomenal.
Thanks,
Really
Jamie.
helpful.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Christine, you have any announcements?
One thing I did want to mention, the Foundation Center online. We've been working with the public library to try and get a membership that if you have your library card, you can access that database for access to foundation grants. And it's a very expensive membership, and you typically have to travel pretty far to find a library or center that has that has access to that program. So hopefully we'll be able to get that locally. And I just followed up with the director again to see where we were with that process. So I will let everybody know. And the library is always there and looking for ways to support the arts community. So if there's any other like Caitlin had mentioned, any sort of databases that require memberships, we could certainly approach the library for maybe being a resource to pool all of those for us. So I'm open to any suggestions on that. And last week I did mention events are slowly, small gatherings, slightly larger groups are being allowed per the governor in the state. So as of yesterday, there are now groups of 250 are permitted to gather outdoors with social distancing measures in place. So as we start thinking about what different programs look like for some of our artists and organizations that are on this call, I know some of you have reached out to me since our last call, and I just want to say again, cgoodman@jcnj.org or 201, I'll just put it in the chat. I'm here to talk through any of the things you might be thinking in terms of the fall and later this summer, what's doable, what's not, and we do permit everything that happens on public property. So if you're thinking about doing an outdoor event, you have some questions about whether or not it would be compliant, I'm happy to talk through that.
Awesome. I have a question that was brought up to me earlier to ask tonight in regards to the arts grants that are due the 1st of July. For the time frame that the activities have to be take place, is it just for the summer or can it go into the fall? That was asked of me.
For the arts program grant, if you have any specific questions, you can direct those to the EDC, but I can say that, per the application, it does not state a timeline. Right. The focus of the programs are really to be responsive to this, moving into recovery and as we move through and respond to COVID. So I would keep that in mind. Timeliness is important, but there isn't a definite deadline for the program, and it was not on the application. Robinson asked what's being planned for JCAS. That's a great question, Robinson. We are doing JCAS no matter what. it's the 30th anniversary. We're going to find a way through it. I want to make sure that we are celebrating and supporting the arts in Jersey City and artists. Right now, we have a few different models as far as how that's going to look. And this summer, we will, as usual, roll out the call for registrations. We're thinking through what this could look like. It will most likely be virtual and in person, a combination depending on where we are come October. I think if venues want to start thinking about what your event, what your exhibition would look like, and if it's not possible to bring people indoors to view, then we could certainly, and supposing that would need to be a last minute call, we would certainly help facilitate a virtual experience of whatever you end up exhibiting. So in terms of what you're going to hang on your walls and how we get that out to the public, we have a few different options. If we are in a position where the governor's guidelines do allow for in-person events, we will, of course, follow any restrictions on that. If we need to encourage venues to have a reduced capacity, that would, of course, impact your opening receptions or closing receptions. And we've also been looking into ways that the city can help support our arts venues with regard to PPE. So in terms of sanitizer, face masks, things of that nature, I'm hoping to be able to make some of those available so you have them on hand should people need them when they enter your facility. So the long and short of it is we really can't predict the future, and I wish we could. The story changes every day practically as far as what's allowed, and we're just trying to get a better grasp on what the fall looks like. But we will have JCast either way, whatever it looks like. So just please have your eye towards those first 4 days of October, and we will help you celebrate and exhibit and promote.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you so much, Christine. Heather, McAdam, any last minute announcements?
Nothing other than just a reminder that the grants are open. Please submit. They're open for whatever day, till the end of the month. So yeah, get them in there. I think that's all.
Awesome.
Heather might have had to drop off. She said her computer was dying.
Okay. All right. Thank you everyone so much for being a part of this. Next week, we're having the annual meeting of the Arts Council. So please join us. We'll send out some notices, but McAdam, you can speak to NJCU's kind of hosting, and if you have any agenda to talk about for the Arts Council annual meeting.
Yeah, sorry, not right now, but we can send out something ahead of time for what that'll be. We're figuring out it's going to be. Last year we did a lot more, so this year will be a quieter affair to fit into our hour Zoom chat here. Cool.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll keep the chat open for a few minutes so that if anyone has anything else to take information back with them. And we hope you have a great week.